Do you want to learn how to remote view? Now is your chance. The International Remote Viewing Association is offering 8 weeks of remote viewing classes instructed by my friend Michelle Freed. Don't miss this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity starting Saturday, September 3rd, 10 a.m. Pacific. The course is only $150, and for members of the IRVA, it's only $110. Just visit irva.org/events/registration to sign up now. If you're listening to this on any audio podcast platform, I highly suggest viewing the episode from a video platform. It's available on Rokfin, Odyssey, and YouTube. Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew. Tonight my guest is Nick Hayes. Before I bring him on, I have to thank C60 PurplePower. This may be the most powerful antioxidant known to man. Acts as a free radical sponge, eliminating toxins in the body. After I started taking C60 within about a month, I started feeling better. And now I feel amazing. I feel better than I've felt in years. So many benefits, more energy, unexpected weight loss. I sleep better. There's so many benefits that you should check out for yourself. Go to their website to check out more, or you can just click the link in the description or visit c60purplepower.com. If you click the link, you're going to get 10% off your order plus free shipping. If for some reason that link doesn't work, you can use coupon code KNOWLEDGE10 and you will get the same discount. So be sure to check that out. Also, please subscribe to Forbidden Knowledge News on lbry.tv. It's our official backup channel. We also are always on all popular podcast platforms. Please check out our new show exclusively on Rokfin called Beyond Classified. You hear me talking about that all the time. Amazing new platform for free-thinking content creators. And finally, get your tickets right now to Forbidden Knowledge NewsCon 2021. It's going to be this April 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, coming up next month. We're going to have 12 extraordinary presenters. Visit our website, Forbidden Knowledge News. Check out the lineup and everything that they're going to be talking about, and get your tickets right now. It's only $29.99 for the full 3-day conference. You do not want to miss that. Today I want to welcome to the show Nick Hayes. He is a UK-based author and photographer who has spent the last 10 years photographing and filming the infrared and ultraviolet parts of the electromagnetic spectrum, documenting the strange invisible life forms, craft-like objects, and other phenomenon that appear to be existing just beyond the range of normal human sight. In September 2016, his first book, Quest for the Invisibles, was published by the Book Tree in San Diego, and was soon followed by the launch of the Quest for the Invisibles website, which was set up as a platform to present new photographic evidence and information on photographing invisible phenomenon. He continues on with his photographic work, as well as doing occasional shows and talks at UFO and paranormal conferences. Nick, welcome. How are you doing today?
Very well, thank you. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yes, thanks for coming on. This is going to be a fascinating discussion. I know the human eye only sees about 2.5% of the electromagnetic spectrum, and there could be life everywhere just beyond the spectrum of our vision. And your book, The Quest for the Invisibles, takes a look at what we may be getting a glimpse of in the sky when we're seeing a UFO or something anomalous, or lights, or some kind of plasma event. And you even have some pictures that we're going to share a little later. First, I'd like to start off with what got you interested in this and looking at this phenomenon.
Well, I've always been into the UFO phenomenon, even a kid when I was a lot younger, watching television and all the sci-fi movies. But I was just taking my dog for a walk one night. It was a really foggy, misty night, freezing cold. And my little dog, he was only about 6 months old at the time, Alfie, and he wanted to go back down an alleyway we'd just gone down. And I was so cold, I nearly said, no, let's go. But I took him down. And while he was sniffing around, I just happened to be looking up at the sky. And I saw a pinky orange glow coming about 200 foot off the ground and about 200 foot away, slowly. And it kept disappearing and then slowly coming back because the mist was so thick. And it got nearer and nearer and nearer. And I was like, what the hell is that? It was totally silent. And what happened was, just as it passed over the top of me, there's a thinner band of mist, and I saw it in its entirety, and it had a dome, like a domed top and a domed sort of bottom, and it was pulsating and moving about sort of walking pace, and it just about went over the top of me, but it seemed to be breathing, and it seemed as if it was alive, and I couldn't understand it. At first I thought it was a craft, but the more I looked at it, it reminded me of one of those bioluminescent life forms that you get, in the deep dark ocean, and it just puzzled me. And it was later on that I discovered the work of Trevor James Constable and the bioforms he'd captured in the infrared. So I thought, well, to me, that was an explanation of what I'd seen, because I was convinced that it was a creature rather than a craft of intelligent design. And up until I'd read the books by Trevor James Constable, I'd not even conceived of the idea that UFOs could be anything other than interplanetary spacecraft. So it disturbed me greatly. And I thought, well, I've got to go out and film more of these things. And I thought, well, how am I going to do it? And I began reading Trevor's book and some of the attraction methods he used. And bit by bit, my family helped me to buy my first infrared camera. And then I moved on to ultraviolet video recorder. And it's just sort of gone on from there. But, I spent, nearly 10 years now. I mean, sometimes I'll be filming multiple cameras, camcorders, 7 hours a day, sometimes 5, 6, 7 days a week. And some of these things were just on like one, they hardly appear on time. Filming sometimes at 150, 50 frames per second and 25 frames per second. And these things are appearing on just one frame. And I use a Geiger counter as well as a detection device. But there's many different types of UFO photography I do, and other, more paranormal type photography, daytime and nighttime. And we'll see later when we see the selection of photographs, and I can go through some of the techniques I use for taking them.
Yeah,
But that's what
definitely.
really got me into it. So that's what I became obsessed with it, because it was a life-changing event when you see something that close, and it almost looked familiar. It was very strange. It disturbed me. When I close my eyes, even now and think of it, I wouldn't say it sends a shudder down me, but it's a very, very, very strange thing. And up until that point, I'd heard people, witness UFOs, and I had no reason to disbelieve them because I believed it was true, but seeing it myself, it just changed my life, and my life stopped. I became obsessed with Quest for the Invisibles, really, just to try and prove Trevor was right over and over and over again, because of the lack of. There's a lot of things about Trevor on the internet, but his work has never been taken that seriously by the scientific community or even the UFO community at a certain point.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Trevor then. For those that aren't familiar with his work, could you tell us a little bit more about what he was doing in his research?
Yeah, well, Trevor James Constable, he was a military historian, written several books on fighter races, and he went into the desert, Mojave Desert, in 1957, using a standard camera loaded with infrared sensitive film. And he was able to photograph amoeba-like bioforms existing in the infrared. And he carried on with his work for many, many years, and he photographed a whole range, sort of ovoid bioforms, and some of them looking very amoeboid bioforms with things that look like vacuoles. And, he became more and more convinced that a lot of the UFOs were actually these plasmatic beings. Especially a lot of them were cigar-shaped, a lot of them were sort of saucer-shaped. So he released his first book in 1958, which was They Live in the Sky. And that covered sort of a lot of his work in the desert. But the book he's probably known more for is Cosmic Course of Life, which was released about 1978, I believe. And then I managed to get the re-released version in 2008. So he basically pioneered that type of UFO photography. And he originally used to use the star exercise as an attraction technique. And later ended up using the cloudbuster, and then finally gave the UFO thing up sort of in the mid-70s and went on to weather modification. Some more studies with etheric energy.
And he called some of these life forms argonautic bioforms. Is that right?
Critter, yeah, he mainly called them critters, but yeah, it was speculation they were, organotic in a sense.
What is organotic? Can you explain exactly what that is?
Basically, the orgone energy, like the cloudbuster manipulates orgone energy, which is sort of life energy, which is everywhere, which bounces off things. And when you put steel tubes grounded in running water, it tends to create a drawing effect, and it can unstick the clouds. It manipulates the orgone energy potential in the atmosphere, and these creatures sort of come to it. And it's just that I use a Geiger counter to detect these things, and it's almost like when these things appear, you get a really high Geiger counter reading. It's like some kind of unknown radiation, and it's whether or not they're made of orgone or they're actually giving off a high orgone charge, like an excited orgone charge. It's actually life energy, but it's almost like, I believe they may be manifesting in that rather than a carbon-based existence. They're manifesting in like heat substance, a plasmoidal form.
Now, have you
Um,
experienced any intelligence or observed any intelligence coming from these life forms, like any interactions or anything like that?
yes, in the last couple of years, there's some pictures that I've taken of some really massive life forms that are coloured blue. Big triangular looking things they are. I sent them in the photographs to you earlier. Now that blue should not appear there, and blue is the colour of organ. Now that was taken with a, but these things, I sensed they were there. I got a taste in my mouth, a metallic taste. I got Geiger counter hits, but I was sitting in my room and I got the feeling I was being watched. And I went straight outside and got my camera, set it up on the tripod, and just took lots and lots of really long infrared exposures, anything up to 30 seconds at a time. And I knew they were there. I couldn't sort of perceive them, but I knew they were there. And I photographed the same thing. I took a series of 20-second exposures and a series of 10-second exposures. And I caught this same object and it had grown in size and all the markings on it were there. I've had a lot of instances like that where a lot of it's like by intuition. I suddenly feel I'm being watched or I feel something's there. So I'll just take scores of photographs. And at night, it's generally by Geiger counter. I set the Geiger counter far beyond, well, not far beyond, but it measures in microsieverts per hour. And the normal reading here is sort of like 0.7 microsieverts per hour up to 0.12. And I set mine for 0.20, and it should never go that high. But these are really high bursts that go even beyond that. And so I carry the Geiger counter, and whichever direction I'm aiming the Geiger counter, I take photographs in that direction. If I'm taking long exposures, I'll set it up on a tripod, or I'll film it something like 1/80th or 1/60th of a second and have it pressed hard to my chest. But I'm filming in total darkness, unless I get multiple repeats and I know something's near to me, like a series of entities that I managed to film. I use the flash, the normal standard flash, of which the infrared camera only sees a small part of the red that appears before the red of the visible spectrum, because it's it's an infrared filter, blocks everything else up to red. So the blue color of these objects shouldn't even appear on there. And you can see that there's white that's been picked up from long exposure from street lamps in the distance. That's white. So it's just how it should be, black and white photo, but these things are appearing blue. So they've obviously put themselves, managed to ingrain themselves somehow onto the, onto the camera. It's very strange, but I really sensed they were talking to me. They were telling me they were there. And I filmed a whole series of things going on for about 4 nights. Same time every night I was out there. I filmed a portal opening, and every photograph had a different color. I saw a whole spectrum of color, which is something Trevor James Constable talked about, the reverse spectrum of color, which appears sort of in the infrared. I got this portal opening and sort of like closing, changing colors. I filmed, I think there's another bioform, a huge one, with another one by, I think I sent that as a photograph.
Yeah, I'm about to start to pull up each of these photos, and as we go through them, you can kind of tell us what they are. Now, as you kind of photograph through different spectrums, are you getting different types of entities in different spectrums, like, versus the spectrum we can see in versus like an ultraviolet spectrum?
Yeah, well, I film, it's a different method. When I use the ultraviolet, I use the sun obliteration technique, and I film directly off the rooftop and use the top of the roof to block the sunlight out through the view of the camcorder. And this creates an area which I refer to as the illumination zone. As anything passing through it or just above it is illuminated for a fraction of a second. And these things come like flying by real quick. And they're not just, they may look like they're directly above the roof, but they're a lot higher. But I'm basically filming at 45 degrees. It's a totally different way of filming, but I've caught a lot more fish-like forms and things in the ultraviolet. It varies really. I film in the daytime in the ultraviolet, but in the infrared, but a lot of stuff seems to be sort of quite high in the sky.
Now, can you see my screen here?
Oh, that's it. Yeah. Well, this was my infrared Canon G10. What happened was I started off in the infrared, managed to capture a lot of things high in the sky, and wasn't that impressed. So I began using filming in the ultraviolet. This went on for nearly 3 or 4 years. And then immediately after that, around the time my cat died, I decided to go out for 2 years every single night. I'd be carrying a Geiger counter in one hand when I walked the dogs and the camera in the other. And I filmed and I took photograph after photograph after photograph. This was a Geiger counter hit that I got while I was going out the gate. And again, I felt something there, you kind of know. So I just took multiple photographs, and this is something that appeared. And the reason it's red is because it's the automatic setting, and that tends to lean towards the red of the visible spectrum. But I normally set it to green grass in daytime situations, and the color green, and that gives you that sort of like white color that you see in daytime in the infrared. but this has got a slight red glow to it because it's sort of leaning towards the red. But this is typical of the plasmoidal-like objects that I've captured, and and also captured by people like the GRCU, the Italian research group, which I wrote a paper a while ago, co-wrote a paper, should I say, in defence of constables' work, positive findings on constables' organotic bioforms, with my friend orgonomist Leon Southgate, and we mentioned the GRCU in there. So if people haven't heard of them, that some of their best footage in that paper. But they caught a lot of things like this, plasmoidal-like things that were there in one, they're there for 1 second, then they're gone. That's just one good example.
Yeah, let me pull up the next one here. I'm gonna just share my
Yeah.
whole screen here. Let's see.
I'll use a flash if I think they're near enough. Sometimes these things aren't visible in the infrared unless they're slightly lit up by light.
Okay, can you see the second one here?
Yeah. That's another example. Yeah, that was taken around the side of the house. I was walking down alongside the house, started getting a feeling of something above the house. So I took loads and loads of different photographs. I used a flash in this case to try and light it up because, as I say, some of these things don't appear in the infrared unless they're lit up, either by infrared light or light from the camera. And it seems just enough to light them up in the infrared sometimes. So the infrared camera doesn't see the full flash, the full, the full colours that make up white light. It only sees a small part because it's 7.
And if you're just looking in the sky, you don't see this at all, right?
I don't see anything at all. No. I just get the sense. At night time. Now this is a very high Geiger counter reading. This is a series of I think 2 or 3 photographs I took. I got a massive Geiger counter reading just as I was sort of going through the gate, and we got some tall trees sort of at the edge of my garden and what I call my research area, which is a field next to it. So I suddenly just aimed the camera up there and I took 3 photos, one after another, at 1/8 of a second, no flash, pitch dark. This was the middle photo.
Very interesting.
A lot of strange things on this. There's looks like loose wire at one end. It's very strange. There's lots of unlit sections, and there's something else at the top. I've got like a point. I think it went up to 0.5 on the Geiger counter, which is very, very high, just for an instant. But it kept happening, so I think it was going round and round. But it looks.
Do you believe these are some sort of plasma entities?
No, this is part of some massive craft. This picture actually continues on. To the left, it carries on. There's another bar that goes along there and comes off at a different angle. And there's another thing at the top. This seems to be part of a structured light thing. These aren't a continuation of lights. If you put these over each other, if you trace them, you'll find they're not the same shape. And you can see several of the sections. This is still something very strange. And I've got a massive Geiger counter here. So I took the first photograph and this appeared in the second. So they don't always appear straight away. The Geiger counter warns you that they're on the way. And they travel quite fast, a lot of them. So, you take a whole series of photographs, like, constantly. This is another Geiger counter one. Where I was walking my dogs. I took, there's about 6 or 7 of these that make up the picture, but it's such a wide photograph and the others are quite dim. So I've only shown the 4. And I think there's another photograph of these in more detail next to it. Yeah, it's the same 4 entity. That's it. Yeah, you can see how different they are. But these were sort of like about 6 or 7 of them really high in the sky, but I still got quite a high Geiger counter reading. So I just took lots of photographs in pitch darkness, no flash, straight into the sky above me. And this was on about, I think, the 4th photograph or something. They appeared. And 1/8 of a second, you can see the trail within that 1/8 of a second movement of that. So.
Right. Now, are you, when you're filming these, can you see these moving?
Not very often, no. I do see things in the visible spectrum, and sometimes they disappear. But I didn't see any of those. No, I was very surprised that I even caught anything. These are just examples taken. I got another camera, an X5N camera, and I carried on going out every night. I think this was 2018 that was taken, yeah. But these are just examples of some of the strange shapes that I've caught in the sky, just from Geiger counter hits. I'm gonna set it to buzz, cool. So doesn't alert people too much if I'm walking down the street. But
yeah,
what I'm saying. It's a quick buzz, so it's just like sort of buzz, So most of the time I catch nothing. Now this is a strange one. This is taken down some garages at the rear of where I live, and it was taken in pitch darkness. Again, no flash, and you're taking these on a tripod, and it's a 1 second exposure, and there's no light source in this again, and you can see the mist dripping off the. It's like an invisible luminous mist moving through the forest sort of area, and you can see it dripping off the leaves. But all I saw was pitch darkness. I saw nothing.
And I'm sure you're well familiar with, normal camera anomalies and artifacts that would cause strange things, and you would know the difference between that and something, unexplainable, right?
Oh gosh, yeah, yeah. Plus, I get a Geiger counter hit. I only take photos on Geiger counter hits. I took a load more photos and nothing was there. It's pitch dark. There's some kind of an energy that's being captured. This is another example taken on the infrared G10 of this was taken from a photograph, and there's probably about 30 of these. They're coming out the ground. I suddenly got a massive hit, no matter which direction I turned in. The Geiger counter was going haywire. So I basically had the flash on, and I just turned around and went chish, 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 all the way around, and I caught a whole load of these, 3 or 4 of them going straight up into the sky, and these are the nearest ones to me. It's the same one, the white one. I just did it in white so people could see it a bit clearer. But again, this was taken sort of just on a tripod in the garden. When I got just as I was going out the gate, I got massive hits and stuff. I take the tripod out when I walk sometimes. I set it up somewhere quiet and sit there in pitch dark with a Geiger counter. And then as soon as I get a hit, I just take photographs. I mean, I can't see anything.
So do you think a lot of the things that are in the sky that people are mistaken for nuts and bolts craft are these sort of entities, these life forms?
I'm not saying all of them because that ring of that load of lights that you just showed, that's part of a structured craft that's obviously invisible and it's big. It was taken above 100-foot trees. Now the actual photograph, it's quite big. It takes up a third of the actual proper photo. Now this is the one I was talking about. This is an amoeba life form. Now this is similar to the things Trevor Jones Consul caught. There's a lot of markings on this and things. But I took this photograph. This is a 20-second exposure. But the photos previous to this showed nothing at all. And this was there, just standing there. And the next photograph was taken straight after this, and I think it was a 10-second exposure. And it's exactly the same thing. All the markings line up, but they're all extended, and this seems to come further into the frame. But I've captured a lot of strange things like this, and there's no light source in this. It was taken in total darkness, and it was very, very faint in the photograph. I could see it on the camera, but when I put it on the screen, because when you take long exposures, you've got to turn down the camera's automatic exposure compensation. Otherwise, any light that comes from anything, the infrared light, will overexpose. So you then put it on the computer and you turn it up slightly to get the color to come back out. But this is it. I caught these two, and then the rest of the photographs had nothing on it for a bit.
Yeah, you mentioned how like they have these amoeba-like life forms under the ocean. That's what this reminds me of, except they're just kind of floating around in the sky, and that's amazing. And we just can't see them. They're beyond the spectrum of our vision.
I think they do. They can. I do think they can be seen sometimes. I think because of the electromagnetic power being put out. Now this is one of my favorites. This was I took a whole series. This was a 30-second exposure. It was taken in total darkness. Okay, I couldn't even see the light. See, you see the white color of the leaves of the trees.
Yes.
Now that's what the photo should look like, black and white, because it's the white balance is made using green grass. So that gives you like any natural light that comes in or any infrared light appears white. So that's what the light should look like, but these are blue. And this is, like I say, this is a 30-second exposure. And the picture I took before was a 20-second exposure. And you can still see this object, but it's very faint and it's in a slightly different position. The two a bit further apart. But I took a whole series of these. And I felt something. I really felt something. This was taken about 30 foot. The top of that tree is about 35 foot tall. And that was taken straight up at an angle of about 70, 80 degrees.
What do you think it is that enables these entities to be seen whenever we can see them without cameras or, any other equipment?
I would say like the amount of electromagnetic energy that's being pumped into the skies. Perhaps. Yeah, well, my cat, I took on a cat. It was a bit of a wild cat. I took him on, left him to bits. His name was Roy, and Roy died and upset me a hell of a lot. So I went out to his gravesite every night, set the tripod up, and I just took loads and loads of 15, 20, 30-second exposures. I took about 1,000 over a couple of months, and hardly anything come out. But these came out just by the gravesite, and no flash, total darkness. I saw nothing at all. And this is a light trail, I think, shooting up, and it even looks like an entity in there. It's a strange-looking photo. If you sort of, obviously, you can't enlarge it on there.
You find a lot of these associated with paranormal activity?
Sorry, say again?
Do you find a lot of these, these images and entities that you catch associated with somewhere that experiences paranormal activity?
Yeah. Well, it's strange because I filmed a whole series of entities in my greenhouse window. Every time I walked with my dog past the greenhouse window, I got a hit on the Geiger counter and I got this massive feeling of dread. I felt sick. So basically, in pitch darkness, I just basically took a photograph, and the flash lit up the greenhouse. I saw nothing, but in the window there was an entity. The first one looked like a ghostly sort of entity in a uniform holding a lantern. Second one looked like an ET, I think it was. Third one looked
Wow.
like some black dark thing with horns, it almost looked like. And the fourth one was this weird. Now, this was taken at Roy's grave again. This was taken in total darkness, 15-second exposure, one of a whole load. There's no lights in this at all. But Roy's grave site is that bit that's lit up at the bottom. All this light is a 15-second exposure. So you've got this coming out, the snake light thing, and then all the other things that are happening within that 15-second exposure. And now the photo straight before it showed nothing at all, pitch black, pitch black. There's nothing in there, taken total darkness, no flash. So it's invisible infrared light, but you can see the entity. You can see, the snake-like entity. It's got like a snout and eyes and things. And, I said, show me a sign you're here, Roy, because I was quite upset and took so many photographs and nothing appeared. Then this came out. And the funny thing is it came out at the time I had a lump in my throat. It was really weird. I don't know whether that
Very
made
strange.
it happen or something, the emotion, I don't know. But I had a lot of paranormal stuff going on in my house after this time. Real full-on stuff like steps, people walking around in the room, things being moved and things happening, Geiger counter going off every 5 minutes, switching itself on when I knew I switched it off, and a whole load of things that really freaked me out. So I stopped sort of filming at ground level, went back to filming in the sky again because my
Yeah,
house
that
bordered
is
onto my
creepy.
sister's and it was affecting her. And the dogs wouldn't go into my place. They were on the floor growling and looking at something, walking around like that, and I was really started freaking me out. You know what I mean? So this is my cloudbuster. This is just the first one I built. I think I put a picture of Trevor's cloudbuster, which is based on the cloudbuster of Dr. Wright, which he used for weather modification for bringing rain and moving weather fronts. And
Now, could you tell us a little bit about the Cloudbuster and how
yeah,
this
well, the
works?
cloudbuster, as you see that, it's a load of steel pipes, and basically the theory is that the organ energy is everywhere, and it jumps off things, and especially pipes and stuff. When it's grounded in water, what it seems to do, wherever you aim those pipes, if you aim them correctly at a cloud, it seems to unstick the cloud and it pulls the organ energy back in through the pipes. They draw pipes basically. I mean, I don't do weather engineering. I'm not, don't get me wrong. I'm not into weather engineering. I use them as a traction method because they create a charge of organ energy in the local area. It seems to charge up the organ energy potential in the sky, and that draws these creatures and sometimes the craft-like objects to it. So. I'm not an expert on weather modification. I mean, I know how it works and stuff, and I don't abuse them or anything. But I've been using them as an attraction technique, really. Apart from at night when I use the Geiger counter, I don't tend to film in the daytime now using Cloudbuster. Now I tend to spend more time at night filming using the Geiger counter because it's a lot easier.
Now, this thing will actually dissipate clouds. It's
It
pointed
will, if
toward.
aimed accurately. Yeah, it will. Yeah, it will. You aim it, and I've done it. It will get
That's
rid of
crazy.
clouds if aimed
Wow,
correctly. Yeah,
that's fascinating.
yeah.
Okay, what do we got here? Oh, it's
So this is
another.
Trevor. Yeah, well, Trevor started off with a minimal cloudbuster like mine with 3 pipes, but he went on to bigger things, as you can see. This is his Willy Wand one,
Wow.
and yeah, he'd go into the desert and he'd film from the desert, or he'd film, from I think from near his house. He'd do. I think he went to Hollywood. He had a place in Hollywood. I think he filmed from there. This is my ultraviolet stuff. Um, So I filmed non-stop for a couple of years, infrared, and I did capture some good stuff, but I wasn't getting it as near as I'd like it, and once you start trying to enlarge it, you lose it, and it's not the same. So I bought myself a 330 nanometer X-Night 330 filter and put it onto my full spectrum converted Sony camcorder. Now when it's converted, what they do, I don't know, I'll explain to the viewers. The camcorders have got a blocking filter which blocks invisible light. So what they do, they remove that and replace it with clear quartz. So you get the whole spectrum. You get the infrared, the ultraviolet, and the visible. And then you use filters to block out what you want. Say, for instance, I use this ultraviolet filter, and that blocks out the infrared and the visible. So you get an almost pure ultraviolet picture. But there is a bit of what they call an infrared bump that occurs in the ultraviolet as well. It's around 700 nanometers, so it's not a pure one. You can get a filter to take that away and make it pure, but this is almost pure ultraviolet. And this is when I began I wasn't sure how to film, and by accident I left the camera facing the top of a building, and my first image I caught was like a jellyfish with tentacles on it, and I forgot to put that one on. Actually, it's in my book, The Quest for the Invisibles. But
That one kind of does look like a jellyfish, that first one, yeah.
yeah, well, I had one that actually looked like a jellyfish moving with tentacles at the front. It looked like an actual ocean going jellyfish.
Wow.
And I thought, oh my God, that's how you film. You know, you block the sun out, you film into the sun, but don't let the sun come in too much. That's a bit high for my liking above the wall, but I generally keep the sunlight lower, and things move into that zone and suddenly light up just for a split second. This only appeared in 2 frames. So this was like about my second capture, and it shows clearly this object moving into the illumination zone, then being suddenly lit up and forming into this. And then the next frame, it had gone. So I then started, I do think I did 3 years filming continuously, every day I could.
What can we do to fight back against big pharma and the compromised medical industry? We can become healthy and break free from the perpetual cycle of being poisoned by criminal organizations like most pharmaceutical companies. Come check out what may be the most powerful antioxidant known to man, C60 PurplePower. The benefits of C60 have been personally outstanding. I use it every day and I feel incredible. I have tons of energy, I sleep great, and I haven't even come down with a cold since I started using C60 over 2 years ago. You can even get C60 for your pets. Do your own research, click the link in the description, and check out their website. If you order from that link or use coupon code KNOWLEDGE10, you get 10% off your order plus free shipping. What is your health worth to you? Now, is this is one of those amoeba-like entities, or is this a plasma form?
I don't know. Ultimately, I don't know. I mean, I believe these things are alive. I believe they feature in the infrared because they're made of heat. So they're obviously, existing in a heat-based substance, having their form expressed in heat. Fourth state of matter. So I don't know. I mean, there's so many different sorts. Yeah, and I began catching these fish-like things. I mean, people talk about skyfish and rods and things and that, but a lot of these look a bit more, fish-like, and you can actually see the angle of the sun reflecting on this one. And I found a lot of these things that I capture in the ultraviolet, they seem to be on some west to east flow. Right, and I remembered I read about that in one of Trevor's books, and Dr. Reich, he talked about this flow, this organic flow, part of the organic, what do you call it, the envelope of the earth.
That does look like a fish. That's crazy.
Yeah, I know. I've got some even more full-on ones, but yeah. So that's the first of the fish-like ones. This is an example of how these things look. They don't make any sense, many of them, aerodynamically or kind of look-wise.
Wow.
But some of these can change the form. But this thing came by, it appeared in 2 frames. I think in 1 frame, you could just see the bit of the propeller thing. But it just shows you how diverse some of these objects are. And they seem to be alive. A lot of them, they seem to just change the form. They can appear as many things. But these seem to be on about 90%, I'd say, of what I capture seems to be on this really fast-flowing invisible flow, which goes from west to east. Exactly how Dr. Reich described it. I mean, I presume it is that etheric flow they're riding on. Now, this is a weird one. This is
wow.
Yeah, this is one of the stranger ones. This is going from left to right. I've put the arrow there. But
that looks half organic and half nuts and bolts. That's crazy.
Yeah. You can sort of understand the right hand side, shooting the other way, but it's going, it's going left to right with the rods first. And I actually did manage to extract another still from this using different software, and it shows the same entity, but some of the rods are in a slightly different place. You can see more of them rather, but it's a continuation. But it's taken, it's the color slight. I couldn't get the color of the background looking the same because it was from a different, taken off using different software. But this is a strange one. Yeah. It always reminds me of the moon. This first bit,
Yeah.
It's got like the rods coming out.
Yeah.
Again, and this is an example. These are 2 very similar ones that were captured sort of a year apart using the full spectrum Sony Handycam and the ultraviolet pass filter. Here you can see I'm using it is the same edge of roof, actually, roughly the same edge of roof top that I'm using to block the sun. And these things
it looks like the same entity.
They're a bit different, actually. One of them's the one on the right's got the fins at the back look slightly different. They're quite a year apart. They are similar, yeah. There's subtle differences. But these, I think these only appeared on one frame of the 25 frames per second, and they're filmed in full sunlight, so you're not getting a stretch from it being a long exposure. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Um, I put
That's
these on here as an
amazing.
example. These are some of the cards I use for my talk, when I do my talks and things. So
Yeah,
I thought it's a good way to present them.
these are
Uh,
amazing.
oh, here's a fish one for you. Yeah, this is.
Oh, wow. That's so strange. I've never seen any, shapes or life forms like this before. It's
I caught
quite
a few
amazing. I
of these.
mean, the most similar is like you said, way at the, depths of the ocean, you may see something looking
Yeah,
strange
yeah,
like this.
yeah. Well, the funny thing is, I've captured a few similar ones to this, but I never saw them this way round in the detail. But this is kind of a one-off one. But and this is actual. Yeah, this is a moving bioform that I captured in 4 frames, and it's going from left to right, and it's like it spins. I found a lot of these things. They spin when they move. They spin round and round and round. So I captured a whole range of different life forms. And this is four. Well, so these are 4 frames taken from it. And the bottom one E is a similar bioform that I captured a bit later on 2013. Yeah, a lot later, a bit later, about 5 months later. Very similar to this. But this one I've caught these things before, but not as clear as that. And this one is an example of, I set the white balance to actually green grass, and that gave me like a purple color, a milky one, whereas the rest of them are kind of more orangey and red. But this gave me not so much detail, but it's very milky and violet. So I
Yeah.
don't film like that often. But again, you can see it's the same bit of roof it's going over. You can see the cobwebs but it's a spinning entity. The live footage of this can be seen on my YouTube channel. There's a Quest for the Invisibles YouTube channel.
What's the YouTube channel again?
It's just QFTI,
Okay.
Quest for the Invisibles, obviously. But yeah, here's another one. This is I got myself another full spectrum Sony Handycam, which filmed at 50 frames a second because the other one was 25. And this was one of my early experiments using this particular camcorder. And this is some kind of worm-like thing that seems to be up there. Only appeared in 1 frame and kind of almost got like a chrysalis type body to it. But I mean, people have filmed a lot of these things before, worm-like entities and things. But it's if you look at the bit on the right, you can actually see almost like a chrysalis-like feel to it.
Right. It would be amazing if you could have a way to just see through this spectrum at all times and see what's all around us.
I think you'd probably be ducking and diving all the time. You'd be walking around.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look at this. Yeah, this is part of a procession. I managed to capture this creature spins. This is a spinning fish. The photograph after this shows a whole load of frames of it, but this is the most fish-like one of the frames. But this was taken on my new camcorder using the edge. I think the next one to it shows the whole. Here you go.
Oh, wow.
It's going from right to left, and it's actually spinning through itself, and it looks like a burst of energy on the second one on the left. It's almost like it loses its form or changes in a big flurry of activity. That's not an aeroplane underneath it. It's actually a bit of spider's web that's blowing from nearby, and it's blowing in the wind. It's not an aeroplane trail or anything.
Those are absolutely amazing. Now, I'm wondering if with these, you have captured such evidence. I'm wondering if there are government factions or, secret agencies that happen to know that these exist and actually study these, because, it's fairly easy, it seems, that you would be able to capture these on a photograph. And if that's the case, it seems like some agency or some, shadowy government faction may already know about these and have for a while. What do you think about that?
I imagine so. It doesn't surprise me. I imagine they've got the fingers into everything. I mean, obviously, Trevor's work's been out there since 1958. And I know he did try to show some of his to the military, but they didn't seem to be that interested at the time. But you can bet your life that, there's groups, I imagine, that are looking into all this stuff, maybe getting an idea from looking at other people's footage. But there are a lot of people just going out there filming a lot of these things things like this in the visible spectrum. Sort of anomalies, anomaly groups. They're filming things quite high in the sky. A lot of them look like balloon-like, some of them. They change form, and there's really good footage coming from all around the world, in the UK and Australia. There's a lot of people doing this. There's been a lot of worm-like creatures filmed, especially I think in South America. Some really great footage of them. So I think it's becoming more and more known. But I imagine the government are interested in this type of thing, but they probably just sit back and watch watch YouTube or something, or watch my videos or something. But yeah, no, it
Right.
doesn't surprise me. I mean, I've had a few problems in the past, as I've talked about on other things. I've been I had a few cars watching me and a few weird things happening, and my equipment was seized on the way into America to be turned into full spectrum. It was seized, and then I immediately had cars following me, and a lot of strange things happened.
Oh, really? Yeah. Could you
Yeah, really,
tell
yeah.
us a little bit more details about that? How your stuff was seized?
Yeah.
That
Okay, so
seems.
I sent a camcorder out to get it made. My first camcorder I sent out to America, no problem, to get it made full spectrum. This next one, quite an expensive camcorder actually, cost me probably about 800 quid, and it was going to cost nearly £1,000 to get it adapted and this and that. I think what £1,500 I think with all the filters anyway. Quite expensive one. I sent it as normal, and all of a sudden I was tracking its progress, and it came off in Kennedy Airport and said ready to go be dispatched. And then about a week later or so, I rang the company and said, "Oh, how's my thing doing?" He said, "Oh, we haven't had it yet." I thought, "Hey," so I went back on there, and it said it had been taken off for inspection. And I kept trying to ring up. Eventually, I got through to someone. They said, "Oh, it's being looked at and stuff." And um, got asked a few questions, and then I went up the shop. Funnily enough, and as I got up the shop, I saw this car with a man and a woman in it with their backs to me, and I saw the guy on the left drop a walkie-talkie. And as I walked by, he turned to the woman. He says, "Oh, that's the male," and I pointed to me. It really freaked me out. I thought, "Oh no, shit!" And I
Oh,
knew they
wow.
were talking about me. And then they kept following me and my sister and stuff. And my sister went into the dentist one day, and they suddenly got on the bus, like mysteriously appeared. It's about the first or second stop out of Abingdon, I think first stop, and sort of stood there, like showed up and just stood there looking at me and really freaking me out and stuff. So that went on for a bit. Yeah, it was a bit strange.
Now,
But they
have
don't like
you
it's a cloudbuster thing. It's the thing they don't like you mucking around with etheric energy. I think this is, but
probably so? Now, besides from the first experience you talked about where you got a glimpse of one of these, have you ever had any other strange experiences, paranormal, UFO, or anything like that?
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to hear about some of
Yeah, well,
those.
going back to well, basically, I've always had a healthy respect for the paranormal. I've never got into the occult or anything. I've read a few books here and there, but never got into it. Always had a healthy respect for it. And then one day, well, what happened was, I'll tell you this story because it's quite a key story. I'd been out there for years, kind of asking in my mind, looking up to the sky, asking if there's any invisible beings or anything that wants to be in my book or show themselves in photographs, we appear. And I've been doing that for a long, long time, which later people saying, people use that technique. And I was doing it without even knowing, I was just doing it in my own head, asking, "Oh, are you there?" Imagine it. And what happened was one day, my sister says, "Will you look after the dogs one day? I'm going out." The dog's sitting on the grass and we share a bit of a driveway. And what happens was I was looked out the window and the dogs were just laying there on the ground, and there's like a white orb, and it was going up and down their bodies, and they were frozen, right? And really freaked me out. And I went out, and they wouldn't. I picked them up, and they were almost like frozen. I put them back in the house. Sister went out, left them in the house, thought nothing of it. Went back upstairs, and then my sister says, "Oh, I'm going out. I won't be back like for another night." This is around New Year's Eve. So basically, I went into my sister's house, sat down in the front room, and all of a sudden the dogs kept looking at me, right, and barking, and I was like, "Shut up," and I kept turning the baskets around and saying, "Watch telly." And slowly they'd be looking around the room like that, and I got a massive uneasy feeling. I saw an orb come through the kitchen wall and travel through another wall and come by me. And then all of a sudden I got this massive feeling of dread, and one of the dogs just backed into the corner and started snarling and looking at something. And the other dog just put its hands over its face. And I felt terrible, really, really freaked me out. And that was the first time I'd experienced anything paranormal. And I was thinking, oh, perhaps it's because I've asked things to come into my reality. And then, it wasn't long after, I think when my cat died, it all really kicked off. I was going out every night, with my camera, taking photos, capturing entities in the greenhouse. And then I was like, things were moving and weird things were happening on my computer. And I was hearing people calling me, and the doorbell would ring at 3 in the morning. And we got a joint doorbell just so for deliveries, me and my sister, because we live next door, but on the same land. And basically, you can't get into our place. We've got like a big gate you've got to go through. So, it's not like someone's walking around, but every morning at 3 o'clock, the doorbell would ring 3 times. And my sister would hear someone like knocking downstairs in the kitchen, and the dogs would start barking. And, you know, and that's how the paranormal side came, really, just from filming Roy and from all this stuff that was happening to me. I never intended to even film paranormal stuff. I was into UFOs and I was into the work of Constable, but it almost just happened, and it nearly drove me insane, to be quite honest with you. I ended up having to get rid of a mirror because I thought I saw an entity in it. The dogs were barking at it, and ended up, painting it black and burying it, and it really freaked me out at the time because I purposely kept away from any occult type things, and I was getting weird dreams, and a whole list of things was happening, and it was very unsettling, really.
Do you think that the entities that you were experiencing were spirits of humans, or possibly something else, some different types of entities? From
It's
your
hard to tell
personal.
because if you look at the picture of my cat, the one I took with my cat, it was like a snake-like entity coming out. I was saying, like, Roy, can you give me a sign that you're still around? And his whole grave site lit up, and he'd been dead by that time about 5 days or so. And there's no candles there, and I think it's taken in pitch darkness. And the photo before is pitch dark; you can't see anything. Honestly, no light source in that photo. 15-second exposure, and all that stuff was going on. It's like a head shape's coming down from the sky, and then something's coming up from his grave and turning into a snake. And then there's almost like a half tree, half human like entity, which you can't see that clear on that version of it, but it's coming out of the ground, like out from like a circular portal. And that was all happening within 15 seconds. And so I don't know. I mean, I was thinking, oh, is that my cat? Is that something? But I don't know, because I was in a bit of a state emotionally. I don't mind admitting it. I love that cat to bits. I took him in from a wild cat, saved his life a couple of times because he got ill, and adored him, and then he just died. He got so thin, got cancer, had to get him put down. Absolutely killed me. So I just kept going out there for evidence, really. And I feel like probably the mental state I was in may have attracted negative beings who perhaps feeding on that energy
Yeah,
as
that
well,
that makes
to
sense.
suspect.
Now you
I
said
don't
you've
know.
also.
Yeah. I don't know. See, I haven't talked to many people about it, really, but I'd like to think it was my cat, that snake-like object. But I mean, I took a whole series of other photos as well that I didn't show tonight. One of them was like a little orb of a man, and this was taken with no light, and he was like screaming at me, like as if to say, "Shut up!" and little face on him, and I was like, "Oh shit!"
Wow.
And a few other little sort of things as well. Yeah, there's a few things, just odd things that have
And you said
happened.
you've also captured portals opening.
Yeah, I captured some kind of portal opening in the sky, and it was like a bluey color, then it went green, then it went pink, and you saw all the colors of the rainbow. Yet this is taken in like infrared, and the filter actually blocks out everything up to the red at the end of the visible light spectrum, which occurs just before the well, it's a barely visible red that appears just before the infrared. So all your blues and everything down the other end shouldn't even be showing. Um, and those entities, they were blue, which is good. It's like the organ, the color of organ. I think Dr. Wright found that it illuminated blue in a vacuum, and
Now,
perhaps it's blue when it's excited.
now you being a photographer, I'd love to ask you about orbs, because I have a lot of paranormal investigators on, and
Mm,
people who talk about that. They take pictures of orbs, and I don't know. I don't know if this is just a dust or just some kind of
it's
camera
hard.
artifact. What you
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
What are your thoughts on orbs?
Well, I've experimented a lot. I've got some CCTV footage of orbs moving in the infrared, actually moving and stopping. And one of them stops in front of me and comes up really slow. And that is a proper orb that's trying to change its shape. But I've also noticed that when I take photographs with a flash in the rain, you get loads of orb-like things. And I was convinced really for a long time that they were specks of, I think a lot of them were specks of moisture. But the thing is, I've seen some of them have got like an effect inside them. And I've actually seen phases on some of them. And I photographed orbs in the darkness, right, with no flash, pitch dark, like this example I said with this guy with the face on it. Um, and they were, so I'm convinced that, these entities, it's probably the best way, well, I mean, it is the best way to travel in an orb, in a, spherical shape. So I imagine energy travels. I imagine dead humans travel around in this reality. And I imagine it's a good way for energy to travel around. But I think some of these orbs, I think, you're only catching them because they're being lit up by the flash. You take photographs without a flash, you won't really see orbs unless they're self-illumined. And they can be very interesting, the ones that seem self-illumined. You even capture them obviously with a flash, but some look different. But I think a lot of things make orbs. And it wasn't until I caught this footage of these white orbs actually coming up and responding to me. And that's on my website, actually. It's on my on the YouTube channel, actually. There's some, I think it's a bit of footage showing an orb, and it comes up really, really slowly, and it's just right in front of me, looking at me. It comes to sort of head height, and I think I'll show the frame separately. So there is some reality to the orb thing. But I think there's so many other things that can look like orbs, even reflections from the camera lens sometimes when it catches light. you can get orb-like things. You've got to be very, very careful. This is why I photograph in the dark. And this is why I photograph really most of the time using a Geiger counter, because I'm only taking photographs on instrumental detection. I mean, the GRCU, there's 25 members, this Italian group, which was led by Luciano Bocconi. They photographed some fantastic things, and they had a book, UFO Laureata Nascosta, which is very, very rare, and it was written in Italian only. I managed to get a copy. I think there's only about 1,000 or so made, but they got some fantastic pictures in there. But they all had different things. Some of them had like temperature indicators, some had like Geiger counters, others were using infrared detectors, ultraviolet detectors. They were using a whole range of different things, and a whole lot of them would shoot in the direction to where they were getting the hits. And these things would register on multiple instruments. But I can't get bogged down because I'm doing this myself. You can't get bogged down with too much technology, because if you're having to think, you've got to have a clear mind, and you got to, you got to have that intent there. And if you're having to keep mucking around with things, I find a Geiger counter in one hand pointing like that when I'm walking a dog or just standing there, and the camera either around my neck or on there in complete silence or something, I can focus. But if I'm having to reach for something else, and it's just going to take your focus away, really. So that's the problem.
Well, while we're talking about this, maybe you could give people who are interested in doing their own pictures and filming to try and capture some of these. What are some tips or techniques that you could let them know if they want to try and capture these themselves?
Buy the book. No.
Good tip.
No,
Yeah.
there is some tips in there, but my website contains a lot of tips on there. There's quite, if you ever go look at the website that I've done, it took me a while to do that. I mean, it's not like I'm some.
Yeah, I'll have the link to that in the description, actually, if anyone wants to go and check that out.
There's sections in there. There's actually sections on infrared UFO photography, ultraviolet UFO photography. It explains the spectrum. It explains this, that, and everything else. And there's several sections on that of various evidences, like entity photographs. There's the pictures that you've seen tonight. A lot of them are on that. But I don't think the blue ones aren't on it yet. They're in the paper. I also wrote the paper. The paper's worth looking at. The two-part paper which I co-wrote with Leon Southgate. It was in defence of Trevor James Constable after somebody claimed that his photos were nothing more than marks on the emulsion, without giving a real argument. So I decided to get together and write a paper. This was a tiny little article this guy wrote, and we responded with a 17,000 word two-part paper, and got permission to use Constable's best of photographs of Constables and the GRCU. So it's in two parts. And the first part is Constable's work and the GRCU, and a really nice picture by a Romanian guy called Florin Georgița. And part two is the UK evidence. And it fits certain criteria which are stated upon, the paper, but it's actually published online at the Journal of Psychiatric Organ Therapy, JPOT. I don't know if I'm not sure if I sent you the link for that or not, but.
Yeah, I think you did.
Yeah, positive. It's called, if you just Google it, it's called Positive Findings on Constable's Organotic Bioforms.
Yeah, you did. I'll put that in there too.
Yeah. That's got probably the best footage, because a lot of this footage by the GRCU, it's in this book that is barely, I think, about 1,000 of them or so made, and it's very, very rare. I paid £350 for this back in 2011. It's an A4 book and very, very, very rare. And people don't get to see this. So I thought, well, it'd be nice to stick up for Constable, as he's not here anymore. And I think all the GRCU are dead as well. I thought it'd be a good idea to put that together. And it covers 60 years of evidence, starting in 1957 with Trevor James Constable, going through the mid-70s, early 80s with the GRCU, and then continuing with my work from 2010 until present day. So you're talking 60 years of footage and photographs showing that this stuff is real. So the best pictures, if you really want to get into this subject of biological UFOs, best thing is to do is to really, either look at the book that I've written or look at this this two-page or two-part even paper, Positive Finding on Constable's Organotic Bioforms. There's some really great photos in there. The GRCU captured loads of great things, and they're hardly heard of by anybody. I'd never heard of them. I mean, I hadn't even heard of Constable until a friend told me about him, and I bought plenty of UFO books. So I was as surprised as anyone when I found out there were these living entities, and that's what I saw that night. That's why it blew me away so much, because I was probably conditioned to thinking that these things were extraterrestrial craft, and that's all they could ever be.
Right. Yeah, it gives a whole new way of looking at some of the things that we're seeing in the sky. And Nick, I want to thank you again for coming on tonight. That was fascinating pictures, fascinating information. Everyone should go check out the website. I'm going to leave that in the description. Before you go, I want to get your thoughts on the past 3-4 years, we've had, an uptick in talk about UFO phenomenon in the mainstream media. We have the Tic Tac video, the Oumuamua space probe coming through that Avi Loeb says, yeah, it's an alien space probe. And, Trump signing the release of documents into the COVID bill, all this weird UFO stuff that has just hit the mainstream and seems to be this strange agenda that's trying to be pushed upon us. What do you think is going on? Do you think it's some sort of preparation or misinformation? Any thoughts on it?
Well, firstly, I find that the Tic Tac footage quite funny because, I've been filming this kind of stuff for years. So it's Trevor James Constable. And, I sat there thinking, the big revelation. And I looked at it, I thought, gosh, look at some of my stuff. I'm not being big-headed, but, the stuff up there, look at Trevor's stuff. There's nothing big, and I certainly don't think it's an alien spacecraft. I'll tell you something about these entities. I've got it down that now there are craft-like entities, but many of them that I've seen are actual. Well, they're craft-like objects, but they're actual entities, and they can look like craft. They can split into two as lights. They can come back together. They can grow. I filmed as an example, a really good example actually, on my YouTube channel. It's called Strange Visible Craft, and it's this strange craft that I saw visibly in the air. And when I zoomed in, it was like a giant egg, and it had radar dishes on it, and you can actually see it because I zoomed right in with this really good camcorder. And I filmed similar things like this before. I've seen them, not actually filmed them because of the tall trees, but I've seen these dishes disappear and then just look like a little egg again. And then they just go into like light. So they seem to be beings. They're not ships. So I think a lot of things people are seeing when they look up into the skies are probably plasmatic beings or these sky beings or sky creatures. But I believe there are craft out there, but I don't see why craft would be flying around, over neighborhoods, just flashing the lights on and off, just, to say hello. But I'm not sure. It could be just information. I started off looking into the Stephen Greer thing and this, that, and the other, but they didn't seem to ever come out with much evidence. And Question Invisible started in 2010. This thing's been running alongside, and I've captured so much evidence just in the infrared. And I'm just a guy with a camcorder and a camera and the will to do it. And there's thousands of other people capturing stuff, but they don't have websites and they don't pursue it perhaps as much as me and don't push it. But I'm not the only person out there doing this, and lots of people are getting evidence. But it does make me wonder whether they're pushing it towards making everyone think that it is a craft. These are crafts. Trying to get
I've wondered that too.
So it doesn't make me very popular then.
Right, yeah, because I look at the extra dimensional or the side of the superspectrum that we can't see often as a possible answer to what we could be seeing in the sky and all around us. It seems to be in some way connected to paranormal phenomenon. So all these things being connected, you have to look at every angle, and you can't just look at the nuts and bolts.
I became convinced quite a while ago that the paranormal and UFO thing are connected in some way. I believe that a lot of these entities and maybe some of the craft that come in are interdimensional. They're coming from different realities, not necessarily, different physical places. But then you put into that all the ancient god things coming down and the evidence that shows that, it looks like that these gods were beings that came down, were not so much space travelers traveling through and going, oh, let's go to Earth, but part of a much, some kind of a thing. And that goes again in with the fallen angel thing that in the Christian philosophy, where these beings came down and taught, women, beautification, men armory, and gave them knowledge of the planets. It all falls in. Looks like that's. So I'm not disputing that happened, and I'm very into that kind of thing. And the fact that strange creatures are being seen more and more, like dogmen and other things like that, that's something I'm very interested in. And it just, I don't know. It's it all seems very sort of intertwined as far as I can see.
Yes, definitely. I would agree. I think it is all intertwined. I think it's all connected in some way. And again, those pictures you shared were fascinating. I can't wait for everybody to see those. And your website again is questfortheinvisibles.co.uk.
Yeah, .co.uk.
Okay, yep, and I will have a link to that in the description as well. And Nick, thank you so much again for coming on tonight. That was awesome information. I'd love to have you back on in the future. We could talk about so much more.
Yeah, sure, Chris. Yeah, no, it'd be a pleasure. Yeah.
All right, we're great. Well, until next time, everyone else, have an excellent evening. We'll see you soon. Right now is the most critical time for us to take back control of our food supply and become self-reliant by having our very own food forest. Transform your yard into a food forest and create a system of self-reliance that's easy and enjoyable.
with our friends at Food Forest Abundance. No matter where you're starting from, you can become more self-reliant. You can take your self-reliance to the next level by becoming a producer of your own food through growing and foraging. Learn how to turn your property into an income-producing source of economic self-reliance. If you're ready to go off-grid, click the link in the description and use coupon code FORBIDDEN for discounts on your very own food forest with Food Forest Abundance.